mom left when I was 5 to go to the trailer park because they had running water. My dad passed when I was 12. The house was condemned. I mean, any bad thing that can happen happened to me. But I grew to realize at a very young age, there's nothing I can do about this stuff. The universe will do what it will do, but what I can control is my response to it.
Hi, and welcome to the Sustainable C-Suite, a conversation series produced by EarthX that brings together leaders who share how business and innovation are helping to drive progress on environmental issues. My name is Peter Simic. I'm the CEO of EarthX, and today I'm very proud to be joined by Mr. Jim Keyes. Jim is known internationally as a business and social change agent, currently heading several initiatives in the tech, art, and education spaces. His career has included serving as CEO of 2 Fortune 500 companies, 7-Eleven and Blockbuster, and serving on numerous civic boards. Now a best-selling author, Jim has written Education is Freedom. The future is in your hands. Thanks, Jim, so much for joining us.
Peter, thank you. Great to be here. Thanks, everybody.
Well, before we jump into your book and into your work, with 7-Eleven and Blockbuster and everything you're doing now, you have such an incredible backstory that I think informs a lot of your work. And I got to hear some of that a couple of months ago at an event where you were awarded by the World Affairs Council. And you were born in a house with no plumbing. Education really was your way into and out of that world. You worked your way in college by working at McDonald's. And so tell us a little bit about both what that experience was like and what it taught you about the value of education or how it shaped your worldview as you kind of moved into the career that you pursued.
Well, the way I describe it is that I grew up with a huge advantage over most people. And it doesn't sound like that would be the case, but sometimes adversity can end up being an advantage. And in my case, it was. Maybe I was fortunate because I was the last of 6 siblings, and we literally grew up in a 3-room shack, no running water, outhouse. In fact, I'll tell you, I was just in Ghana. It's hard to be in Ghana and tell a poor boy story. I'm like, hey, I grew up poor, and I'm looking at this audience going, they're not going to buy it. And I said, I got one thing over you guys. You never had to shovel snow to get to the outhouse in the middle of the night. And I grew up in Massachusetts. So, but yeah, the thing is, I had the advantage of seeing siblings come before me, and sometimes you learn from your siblings' mistakes. And what I saw in them is a victim mentality. It's like, oh, woe is me, I can't do anything. And everyone around me said, you can't do anything. You'll never have enough money to go to school. You can't, just know your place. It's in the factory where your dad worked or your mom worked or whatever. And I just never accepted that. And thank God for teachers who took me under their wing and said, hey, kid, you've got some potential. You can do whatever you want. For me, education was that huge difference, but not about, and this is why the book is called Education is Freedom. It wasn't about making money. Because my dad and my mom never made it past the 6th grade. They had no idea what to tell me, and they had no idea of the value of money. It's such a different world that they lived in. They didn't care about getting rich because it wasn't even in the cards. What they wanted was freedom. My dad had been in World War II, was on the Burma Road as a truck driver, and would tell me stories about the Burmese people and the culture and the lifestyle. And he was fascinated by it. But he could never have the freedom to travel outside of our community because he was basically trapped in his existence, tied to his machine at the factory. And what he wanted for me wasn't, Jim, I want you to be rich and fly your own airplane one day. It was way out of his frame of reference. But what he wanted for me was freedom.
And you say freedom in your book. You talk about freedom as an education as change or overcoming the resistance to change. I thought that was an interesting concept. What did you mean by that? How are you framing it in that way?
Well, this is why I see the way I grew up with adversity, with constant change as an advantage, because I grew up in such a harsh environment, and being poor was the least of it. My mom left when I was 5 to go to the trailer park because they had running water. My dad passed when I was 12. The house was condemned. I mean, any bad thing that can happen happened to me. But I grew to realize at a very young age, there's nothing I can do about this stuff. The universe is I could have been born into a family in Brazil in the jungle. So, make what the universe will do what it will do. But what I can control is my response to it. And to me, that ended up being a huge competitive advantage because as I got on through life and I went to school with some very wealthy children, some very good families, I felt like I had more freedom and more, let's say, agency to be what I want to be than they did because they were living in a very controlled environment and I had no downside. There was really no risk. What are they going to do, take my house? They did, So that was an advantage. I saw adversity as an advantage if you can look at it that way and learn from the bad things that happen to you.
Well, adversity and fear, and I know we're here to talk a lot about corporate sustainability and a lot of the conversations we're having with corporate leaders. We're in a moment of a lot of trepidation and fear. There's a lot of headwinds. There's a lot of moving away from some of the things that were driving a lot of the innovation that, the business world was leaving. I mean, what do you see as sort of the drivers, real drivers of some of that reticence in the corporate world at the moment? Where are the fears? Is it broader than just the headlines? I mean, because it seems like a lot of this ties deeper into things that you've encountered in your explorations of education and its roles.
It is, and in fact, if I was to say what drove my career, what made me successful, what gave me the privilege of leading 2 Fortune 500 companies and doing the things I do today, it's truly because I've cracked the code to being fearless. And what I've discovered is there's nothing that I can't learn. If I want to go change the battery in my motorcycle, I just get on YouTube and I learn how to do it. I do it. If I want to learn physics, I can go do that. I can learn it. So there's no problem that could arise that I can't at least study a solution to. And then I've got another secret weapon in that what I can't know, that's when I rely back on my faith. And this doesn't have to be in a religious sense or a spiritual sense. You have to believe in yourself and believe that the universe will conspire to make things happen for you. And that message has translated in the United States and the Christian community and the Jewish community. I'll be in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia in 2 weeks, and I'm carrying the same message that this combination of what you can learn, your knowledge, and what you believe, your faith, will that provide basically a double set of armor against anything you have to be afraid of. So what are we afraid of?
Well, take us into, you're CEO of 7-Eleven, you're CEO of Blockbuster, and particularly talking about change, you became CEO of Blockbuster at a time in which that industry was changing rapidly. What was that like at the time, and how did some of the characteristics that you're describing kind of shape your approach to some of those challenges you faced?
Yeah, it was pretty challenging. It was terrible for a time there. I joined in 2007 thinking that I was going to take the company into streaming video after a pretty successful run with 7-Eleven. And by the way, 7-Eleven was bankrupt in 1991. They had resisted change. The company was stuck in the old way of doing business. And I'd learned that technology and the ability to embrace change, if you think about retail's all about change. What you need for convenience items tomorrow is going to be completely different from yesterday or the day before. And 7-Eleven had stopped embracing change. They were stuck. They were afraid. I got one great anecdote. I got to the business via the oil business. They had bought a gasoline company, Citgo Petroleum. I wanted to bring this brand new technology, island card readers, the things we all take for granted today. I brought that technology to the table and said, hey, we're gonna do this. It's going to be great. It's going to be more convenient to buy gasoline. You don't have to prepay. Go in the store twice. I had a board member stand up, slam his fist on the table. Mad. Fight or flight, right? You're threatening me. You're bringing something new to the table. He said, over my dead body, will you ever bring those things into my stores? And I was like, damn, that's kind of strong. And so, okay, fine. So I went to another market and tested it out there, came back, proved that it would double sales inside and outside because it made it more convenient to buy gasoline. And today they're everywhere. But it's an example of that resistance to change that I faced. So anyway, Blockbuster.
Yeah. Well, before we go back to
it.
Blockbuster, I want to no, but I think that's an interesting anecdote, because I think that's this position a lot of corporate leaders are finding themselves in right now.
Yeah.
And if they say, "Hey, we need to make some, take some action that makes us more compliant with, sustainability goals, that is more conscious of how we're affecting supply chains and emissions," there's a lot of pushback. There's a lot of reticence to say, "Now's not the time. Let's keep our powder dry. Let's wait." So when you had to move that board and move the company through that adaptation, I mean, how did you go about doing that? What was the approach? How do you bring the team with you?
Yeah, it's first of all recognizing why the problem is there, and what I've discovered is that fear is the biggest obstacle to personal growth, to corporate success, and candidly, what's going on out there in society right now is just turn on TV. It's a fire hose of fear, and when people figure out that fear works, and it does. In the short term, it can motivate people. They use it because it's kind of the lowest common denominator. It's easier to scare people than inspire them. So I saw that in the corporate community, and there is an antidote to fear. It's knowledge. So I became a teacher and spent 90% of my effort trying to communicate effectively why there's nothing to fear from these changes. And how if we embrace these changes and our competition doesn't, it's going to be a huge advantage. We see it now. Sustainability is a classic example. I bought a Tesla because I'm always trying to see new things. This is in 2011. So I was an early adopter. And here's how I saw the Tesla. Even though I've kind of grown up in the petroleum business and all of my peers think EVs are being forced upon us. And I'm telling my friends, I'm going, no, it's like this. I'm driving an iPhone. I don't drive it because it has a battery. It's got nothing to do with why I bought a Tesla. I drove it because it's new technology. I don't have a fart machine in my General Motors truck. For those who don't understand that joke, Tesla, and this General Motors would never do this, but some engineer at Tesla put into the programming a special button that if you want to have your directional signal, instead of going beep, 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 or click, 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 it'll go. Now, kids love this. Kids absolutely love this. But it's the kind of thing, I mean, it's like your iPhone in that I'd get in my car and there'd be a whole new set of things the car can do. And I don't have to buy a new car. It's just upload a new set of software. And yet the industry looks at it and says, oh, it's just a bunch of tree huggers going buying those cars. They're all going to be worthless and blah, blah, blah. So it's a rational fear of the unknown, fear of change, rather than embracing it and saying, hey, let's work together and, figure out why people really are buying these things.
So Blockbuster was a pretty scary situation. Take us through that journey, and yeah, I mean, what was the culture like within the company? I imagine it's not everyone's aware of what's happening in the world and the threat, and you have a lot of people's livelihoods, and
Sure.
You're sitting in that desk, having to make some hard decisions that will affect all of that.
So here's what's on the cover of my book. This is an image of the world that I got this idea from friends. I've got the privilege of being friends with some astronauts, guys like Buzz Aldrin, Charlie Duke. I've done some fun projects with the Apollo guys. And virtually every astronaut, the Apollo guys, the shuttle pilots, the space station, they have this thing called the overview effect when they see the Earth. And what that represents to me is the difference between having perspective. I fly an airplane. I'm at 45,000 feet. I have not quite this view, but I've got just the curvature of the Earth. I'm looking at the Earth from a perspective that doesn't see borders, doesn't see races, doesn't see problems. We see this beautiful planet that we want to protect. Blockbuster is burdened even today with perception. When I came to Blockbuster, I saw that perception. What is that perception? It's a brick and mortar store locked into DVDs and it's going to go away. There was no need for Blockbuster to ever go away. And if you, by the way, have the perception that it went away because they didn't take advantage of technology, you're missing out on probably one of the best case studies that exist in business. Because it wasn't Netflix that crushed Blockbuster. It was fear that crushed Blockbuster. And a whole host of things from activist shareholders to debt holders trying to crush the company to newspapers printing articles about a bankruptcy that wasn't going to happen to all kinds of things. So I try to give you the nickel version of the story. I like to tell stories, so I apologize if they get long. I joined in 2007. There's a rumor on the street that Blockbuster laughed Netflix out of the room when they came and said, will you buy us? That happened in the year 2000, 7 years before I got there. But it happened because Netflix was struggling. The stock was 79 cents. They tried to sell themselves for $50 million. Weren't worth anything near that. And Blockbuster could do exactly the same thing, DVDs by mail. So that perception is false. It's 2020 hindsight. Gee, they should have bought them. No one would have made that decision. And I ask any 12-year-old who'd never been in a Blockbuster who gives me crap online. That's what it is, right? I get DM'd by these, 12-year-olds saying, you should have done that. They were too young to even know what Blockbuster was, but they've got an opinion. So I tell them, anybody that says it, did you buy the stock for 79 cents? The dial forward, 2007, I get there. I'm trying to buy the company, not run the company. I already had a successful run at 7-Eleven. I'd made plenty of money. I wanted to use technology to help turn around this company. Carl Icahn was the lead director, talked me out of working with PE to take it private, said, you run a public company, it's fine, I got your back. And he did, until he didn't. And he said, let's do this. So we did. So I joined the company as a public company. First thing I did is buy a streaming video company. I had the buy or build option. It was cheaper and easier to buy because the studios had created their own streaming capability. These are things people either forget or never knew. So we bought this streaming entity with 3,000 digitized titles, all the new releases. Huge competitive advantage versus Netflix. Then what happens? I've got two more pieces of the puzzle. Viacom, Philippe Dumond approaches me. Viacom had previously owned Blockbuster before they spun them off and put $1 billion of debt on. Remember that number. And Viacom approached me and said, we're going to package up all the old movies. We don't want Netflix or these subscription guys to run amok. We want them consolidated. We'll give them to you, Blockbuster, exclusively for $100 million. Third piece of the puzzle, Google calls me up. Guy named Nikesh Arora, who runs another big tech company today. He was number 2 guy, 3 guy at Google. He says, hey, we got a problem. We bought YouTube and the studios are killing us because kids they're posting up content, movie content on YouTube. How would you like to partner with us? Well, we'll be your distribution agent. Everything free YouTube, everything paid Blockbuster, movies, games, TV, everything.
What year is it? This is 2007?
This is in 2007.
I mean, that's like the world we're moving into right now, which
2008,
is wild, yeah.
Actually. Yeah, kind of. And so we got all the pieces of the puzzle ready to pull the trigger. And then remember what happened in the third quarter of 2008?
A little thing.
A little thing.
A little thing happened.
Lehman Brothers collapses. General Motors and Ford are going for bailouts. Nobody's going to bail out Blockbuster. We had $1 billion of debt due in 2009. I couldn't get it refinanced. Whole world's collapsing around me. Still no problem. We had 90-day credit terms. So in other words, we could rent a video, buy a video, rent it 20 times before we ever had to pay for it. Blockbuster never needed to go into bankruptcy. But I had activist shareholders, debt holders trying to crush the company and make a quick $300-400 million just by spinning the inventory. And they were spinning the rumors that we were going to file. And here's where the fear kicks in. One studio, Paramount, said, I don't want to be left holding the bag. I don't want a $10 million receivable from Blockbuster. I'm going to put you on cash terms. Well, they all fell like dominoes. And suddenly, in about a 2-week period, $300 million in liquidity got swept out of the company. And I needed to do a refinancing because I had $1 billion of debt due in 2009. That forced our hand, made us restructure the company. I could have quit. My family, everybody's saying, get out of there. You didn't start this mess. It was Warren Buffett, actually, that caught me at Bill Gates' house, as crazy as this sounds. CEO summit for Microsoft. Bezos is there and all these other people, and I'm kind of starstruck. I'm like, hey, I just run Blockbuster. These guys are really cool. And Buffett sees me in the line for food, and he goes, Keys, what are you doing now? And I started playing the victim. Oh, Warren, because I'm human. I've got that fear thing.
Sure, yeah.
I teach not to be afraid, but I was like, yeah, it's embarrassing. And, I was just in the New York Post with a Pinocchio nose, headline blockbusted,
Posted have fun with that one.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So, it was embarrassing, and I started playing the victim. I don't know what I should do. I think I'm gonna probably bail out of this thing, but yeah, I gave it a shot. And he looks me dead in the eye, as only Warren Buffett can do, and he goes, "Would you rather be on the sidelines, watching on the bench, watching somebody else do this?" No.
Right.
Get back in, dust yourself off, and take another shot at the plate. It's just business, and that was such an important reminder. We all need somebody from time to time to whisper in our ear. It's not personal. It's just business. Do your best job. And that's all you can do. Which is exactly what I did. So I stayed the course, got the company restructured, got it sold to Dish Network. It was actually Dish several years later that decided for a whole different set of purposes to shut the company down and to not continue with the Blockbuster brand.
Wow. It feels like that kind of fearless drive to pick up and keep going is part of the motivation for you to now get involved with another hard to maneuver, freighter at sea that you're trying to influence, but going back to the education piece, and that's your work with the current administration. Tell us a little bit about and the Department of Education and what's going on there.
Well, first, let me drill into this fear thing a bit, because this is part and parcel to what we have. We're terrified now about education. Oh my God, they're indoctrinating my kids. What are they reading? Here's the reality. We have 31% functional literacy in the 4th grade in America. That means 70% of our kids can't read at a 4th grade level when they're in the 4th grade. I'm more worried about can they read than what they read. Let's worry about first getting 100% literacy, and then let's worry about, oh my gosh, they might be reading something bad. They're not in the library now, and we need them in the library. So it's just fear. It's irrational fear of stuff that we're told to be afraid of. It's perceptions that are driving this country and driving everything from immigration to education to sustainability and preventing us from working together to come up with solutions. We're all spinning around, getting mad at each other and having polarization. So, and this fear thing is very human. In the course of writing this book, I went back and studied a bunch of ancient philosophers, and a guy named Ibn Rushd said it best. He said, ignorance leads to fear. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hatred, and hatred leads to violence. Where are we in the world, in that spiral? By the way, Yoda said it to Luke when he was teaching him how to be a Jedi. You must avoid ignorance because it's knowledge that you need to eliminate fear. And fear leads to the dark side, he said. So I write this book. I didn't realize when I dropped this book that all of a sudden the world is going to be at war with education. And that, I don't know if you saw the New York Times today, Harvard now has fallen to number 3 in the world as an academic institution, replaced by a university in China as number 1. How do we let that happen? Why? And we've now had people go to war with Harvard. And maybe there's a host of reasons, but the challenge is we've got to be able to overcome this fear. So here's my antidote to all of this stuff. Because the opposite of that fear cycle is if you have knowledge, then you have understanding. Understanding leads to hope, and hope leads to peace. So I'm out all over the world talking about the antidote to hatred and war and violence is education, by the way, and faith, whatever it would be, that together we don't have anything to fear. So come back to what are you going to do about it? So the administration announced, we're going to eliminate the Department of Education. And I went, granted, it may not be efficient, but instead of eliminating it, can we please reinvent it? So here's my solution. Going back to 7-Eleven and Blockbuster. You can't run a major corporation, a worldwide corporation, without data. How do you get data? And this is why 7-Eleven was in bankruptcy in 1991. How do you get data? We created an operating system. I had the benefit of basically borrowing the technology from my Japanese licensee. We put that operating system, and now we had data on every store, and we could customize the assortment for each store in each location to satisfy the needs of that customer. So people say education is very local. It is. But you can't be local and nimble if you don't have data. So we had that. And then we had the other advantage that we don't have in education. We had scale. And with scale, we could buy more efficiently for the whole network. We could create accounting systems, eliminate paperwork, have efficiencies. So that combination, an operating system took 7-Eleven from bankruptcy to they now have 90,000 stores worldwide. Today in the United States, we have 13,000 independent school districts behaving like 7-Eleven's districts did in the old days. They're all buying, they've all got buying departments, they're all buying their own software, they have their own systems. A kid that moves from San Francisco to Dallas has to hand carry transcripts and pray someone keys them in. And think about that. We're still manually keying in things. So here's my solution. Create a national, federally funded operating system that will allow us to bring modern technology into the classroom, eliminate the redundancy and the paperwork and inefficiencies of our current system, almost do what we did back in the days when you would have had to cut my arm off to give up my BlackBerry, until Apple built iOS and invited everybody to come in, and now all these tools are available to me at my fingertips. Why not have a portal to unlimited learning for every student and every teacher and every classroom to have access to the best education technology tools? Because today there are AI tutors that can teach any kid to read by the time they're 4 years old. With an AI-assisted tutor and phonics and all the other things you need to read, we can do this, and we should be setting a goal like JFK did in 1962 and say, we're going to have 100% literacy in this country in this decade, not because it's easy, but because it's hard, and we can harness the power of technology to make that possible. That's my mission.
Well, I'm thinking here now what you were talking about earlier of how do you turn a company and solve that fear internally, and what have your conversations been with the administration so far? And you have, like you said, this reticence to sort of have any sort of national overview of education, and or how do you break through that? And take us into some of those discussions.
Well, a little packaging, a little marketing. So I wasn't having much success. I wrote an op-ed, please don't eliminate the Department of Education, instead reinvent it. I phoned up a couple friends within the administration. They were like, that'll never work. They've already made up their minds, give it up. And I said, okay, how about if I come up with another idea? I know. The Secretary of Education comes from WWE, Worldwide Wrestling, right? We're going to do a mega idea. It's make education great again.
Love it.
And so I literally had some red caps made up, make education great again, show up at her office with a red cap, gave her one. She loved it, loved the cap, asked one for the president. Wore it in a Wall Street Journal interview. Unfortunately, she loved the cap more than the idea. But she did assist. She conceptually got it. That we really do need to bring a technology solution to the table. So her recommendation is go to the National Governors Association. And that's where I am now, trying to get on the agenda in February for the Washington, D.C. meeting for the National Governors Association to try to convince them, guys, we've got to depoliticize this.
Right.
Got to bring technology.
But start at that state level and get consensus among states as a way to sort of push it up from.
If I can get at least 2 states, if I could get Texas, we've got enough critical mass in a state like Texas or California that we can demonstrate the efficiency and effectiveness of this system. But I need some scale to make this happen.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that a minute ago that the antidote to fear was hope, and to close, I'm curious what gives you hope at this moment? What keeps you optimistic? Having traveled around the world, you said in Ghana, and you're going to Kuwait, and you're talking to people from all over. I mean, what are you seeing that gives you most hope that thinks that we're going to rise to be able to meet some of the challenges of the moment?
I think I get the most hope from the young people that I encounter along the way, because they, let's face it, the older we are, the more we get stuck in our ways of thinking. Perception ends up being pretty predominant in a lot of people, and it's hard to change that. But that next generation, I believe, first of all, embrace technology in a way that many of us don't. And I think they see the relevance. I'll give you an example. I've got a video out. Kid put a microphone in front of my face over at Highland Park Village, said, "What's the key to success?" I said, change, confidence, and clarity. Those 3 things. You can embrace those, you can accomplish anything. That video's got over 50 million views worldwide. And when I'm in Ghana, I have kids, or Nigeria, I have kids coming up to me, kids, 20, 30, 40-year-old people, saying, "I saw your video. Change, confidence, clarity. I've embraced that. It's helping my business, or it's helping me in school." That's why I have hope. I think that next generation really will embrace the technology, will elevate education. I believe at a rate, if you think about machine language, the reason AI is so good, a machine can teach a machine faster than a human can teach a machine. Well, if we apply that same logic to technology, machine language can teach a human at a rate we've never seen before. Why not take advantage of that? And I think that's what we'll do. We'll elevate humanity to the point we could have, it's possible to have, 100% literacy across the planet. Take a while, but I think we can get there.
Well, Jim, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And thanks, you all, for listening. If you'd like to hear more of these conversations and also learn more about how you can join us in April at EarthX 26, please visit earthx.org. And thanks again. Appreciate it. Thanks all.
Peter. Thanks, everybody.